It was a terrible night for women and children, for the middle class, poor people, for democracy, for decency, unquote. Late night host Jimmy Kimmel spoke those words to the camera during the 2024 election. Rachel Maddow, a former host on CNN, had similar words following the 2016 election. Quote, "You're awake right now, and you're not having a terrible, terrible dream. Also, you're not dead, and you haven't gone to hell." Unquote. Quote, "You're not going to have a country anymore," unquote, Donald Trump proclaimed in 2020. But Jimmy Kimmel didn't actually believe, despite his tears, that women and children would suffer for the next 4 years under a new president. Rachel Maddow didn't really believe that following the 2016, the country would undergo hell-like conditions. Donald Trump did not believe in 2020 that our country had come to an end. Here, Jimmy Kimmel, Rachel Maddow, and Donald Trump are practicing false outrage. Even if those who spout falsehoods don't actually believe them, those falsehoods influence others around them. Family, books, teachers, movies, and friends shape our personal beliefs. But one group of these influences sits behind a shiny desk. They brazenly declare what is right and what is wrong. Who deserves respect and who deserves insult. This group is a subset of political commentators, and their worldview of false outrage and moral confusion has corrupted the morality of millions of Americans. In this speech, we will discuss false outrage. First, we will see how outrage stops dialogue. Second, we'll see how it destroys true morality. And third, we'll look at the growth of false outrage in our culture. In the introduction, we saw instances where media figures were outraged. But their outrage wasn't real. It was a show for the cameras. False outrage. By definition, false outrage is not real. It's a purposeful exaggeration of anger, shock, indignation. As writers for The Minimalist, a blog that encourages simple living, put it, quote, "We've all gotten offended without asking ourselves why, and then used our outrage to cast judgment upon others. It helps us feel better, and pretending to be offended is much easier than attempting to breach the walls of introspection." Unquote. When we pretend to be outraged, we don't have to ask, why do I believe this? Piers Morgan, the very British host of a political show with 4 million followers, uses outrage to avoid hard questions. In 2017, when a guest on his show questioned his stance on gun policy, he responded, "How dare you?" his face tightening for the camera. When his guest answered, "Well, you can keep saying that, but my point still stands," unquote, Piers didn't address the point. "Again, how dare you?" he repeated. Nothing Piers Morgan said advanced the debate. Instead, he just used outrage to shield himself, because false outrage is easier than introspection. One of my favorite videos of Charlie Kirk is one where he sits at a college campus alone, before he was famous. "Prove me wrong," read the sign on his table. Angrily, a woman with short, dyed hair walked up to the table, demanding, "What are you doing here?" Charlie answered, quote, "When you stop having a human connection with people you disagree with, bad stuff happens." Unquote. Angrily, the woman stormed away. But Charlie was right. Replacing dialogue with outrage is disastrous. Not only does false outrage impair debate, it twists morality. This is the second and greatest sin of false outrage. Its practitioners remain that saying good words amounts to or even surpasses actually doing good. Joshua Grubbs, associate professor of psychology at the University of New Mexico, studied why people practice false outrage. Quote, "Participants self-reported their motivation as status-seeking," unquote. Members of the media hope to heighten their status in the eyes of others by taking strong stands, where they feel they have the moral high ground. Another late night host, Stephen Colbert, has done exactly that. Quote, I'm sure it's just a coincidence, but in 1939 they held a pro-Nazi rally there. Unquote. With this remark, Colbert insinuated that Trump is Nazi adjacent, having created a straw man out of Trump, an evil Nazi. Stephen Colbert spared no words, swearing at Trump live on national television. Statements make sense within a worldview which treats outrage, even at exaggerated or symbolic evils, as an act of virtue. Author Glenn Beck describes the human effect of false outrage in his book, Addicted to Outrage. Quote, deprives human beings of genuine humanity, replacing instead with an outwardly facing caricature of a virtuous human being wrapped around a rotting corpse. Unquote. This twisted worldview has morality backwards. False outrage replaces good deeds with outraged words. As we've seen, false outrage disrupts dialogue and warps morality. But even worse, it's spreading across the culture. For example, Benny Johnson, a conservative podcaster with 6 million followers, uses false outrage to attract views. At the time of writing, all of his last 17 videos each have a thumbnail of angry politicians. Similarly, in an article for Science magazine, Killian McLaughlin and her colleagues found that, quote, social media posts that express outrage are liked and shared more, training users to express outrage and ranking algorithms to amplify it, quote. Unfortunately, false outrage doesn't stay online. Humans copy the behaviors and worldviews of the people they spend their time around. Talk show hosts and media figures consume a significant portion of many people's days. Logically, their worldview seeps into the culture. Unfortunate statistics demonstrate this. According to the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, a free speech organization, quote, this year, more than 2/3 of students, 68%, said that shouting down a speaker is at least rarely acceptable. The report continued, quote, even more concerning, about 1/3 of students, 32%, said that using violence to stop a campus speech is at least rarely acceptable. Unquote. The report noted that these numbers have risen significantly over the past few years. I've had a personal experience with false outrage. 3 years ago, my grandparents and I went to the March for Life in Washington, D.C. When the march ended, I kept my poster as a souvenir. A woman saw me carrying the poster and began screaming at 13-year-old me, telling me I should never have participated in the march. Likely her beliefs came from political commentators online. But they caused her to take action in the real world. She believed yelling at 13-year-olds makes you a good person. False outrage seeps into the real world, and there it causes even more harm. As we've seen, the worldview of some political commentators celebrates false outrage, even though specific media figures don't deserve all the blame. But their worldview does deserve the blame. Their worldview is false. Fake outrage is not a virtue. Moral grandstanding is not a good deed. The moral confusion of media hosts has eroded the genuine compassion of millions and transformed it into outrage. But I wouldn't have accomplished anything if I told you to be outraged at false outrage. I used to be addicted to outrage. I grew angry at every new news story. Thankfully, I was convicted after reading Glenn Beck's book, Addicted to Outrage. I realized what I had been doing. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things, says Colossians 3 verse 2. I made a pledge, stop being outraged at earthly things. Imagine if everyone stopped practicing false outrage. Our dialogue could be constructive, We could do good deeds instead of believing that outrage makes you a moral person. And the culture would embrace genuine human compassion. So I'll leave you with this. False outrage isn't worth it. Life is too beautiful to waste being angry.